husband decided to clean my car and found a napkin with used protection in it. I heard him scream. Hey Reddit, I'm Sarah. I've been a huge fan of this app for a while, but I've never really posted much. It's my first time sharing a story, and I hope this community can offer some understanding. My husband David and I have known each other all our lives. We grew up together, went to school together, and eventually fell in love. It's been 6 years since we got married, and we've always dreamed of starting a family together. David is 34 years old. He's a very talented programmer and makes a very good living working from home. He comes from a wealthy family, so he doesn't have to work as much. I, on the other hand, am 33 years old. I work a regular 9-to-5 job in an office. It's not glamorous, but I've never really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Plus, the job gave me time for my affair. We met as children, growing up in the same neighborhood. Our parents were friends, so we spent a lot of time together, playing and exploring the world around us. As we grew older, our bond only grew stronger, and it was no surprise to anyone when we fell in love. One thing that David and I have always dreamed of is starting a family. We didn't have any children yet, but we were hoping to change that in the next few years. We talked about it often, imagining what our children would be like, how we would raise them, and the adventures we would have as a family. Our childhood together was filled with so many memories. We were always getting into mischief, exploring the woods behind our houses and dreaming about the future. David was always the adventurous one, coming up with crazy ideas and dragging me along for the ride. I was more reserved, but I loved his sense of adventure and the way he pushed me out of my comfort zone. One of my earliest memories of David is from when we were about 5 years old. We were playing in the backyard, pretending to be pirates on a grand adventure. David had found an old map in his attic, and he was convinced it led to buried treasure. We spent hours digging in the dirt, searching for treasure that was never there, but it didn't matter. We were together, having the time of our lives. As we grew older, our bond only grew stronger. We went through all the ups and downs of childhood together, supporting each other through thick and thin. We were there for each other's first crushes, first heartbreaks, and everything in between. Our friendship was the foundation of everything we would become, and I'm so grateful for it. High school brought its own set of challenges, but we faced them together. David was always the smart one, acing his exams without even trying. I, on the other hand, had to work hard for my grades, but David was always there to help me study and encourage me to do my best. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and I'm forever grateful for that. It was during our high school years that our relationship started to change. We went through our awkward teenage years together, supporting each other through the ups and downs of high school. And when we finally admitted our feelings for each other, it was like everything clicked into place. We began to see each other in a new light, and what had once been a close friendship blossomed into something more. It was a scary and exciting time for both of us, but we knew deep down that we were meant to be together. After high school, we went our separate ways for a while, each pursuing our own dreams and aspirations. David went off to college to study computer science, while I stayed behind to work and save up for my own education. Despite the distance, we stayed in touch, talking on the phone for hours and visiting each other whenever we could. Our love has been a constant source of strength and joy in my life. David was my rock, always there to support me, to make me laugh, and to hold me when I cried. I can't imagine my life without him, and I'm so grateful for the life we've built together. I regret what I did, honestly. David is never going to forgive me. After we both graduated, we decided to take the next step in our relationship and move in together. It was a big decision, but we knew it was the right one. Living together brought us even closer, and we quickly settled into a comfortable routine. David continued to work in the tech industry, while I found a job in an office working 9 to 5. As the years went by, our love only grew stronger. We supported each other through all of life's ups and downs, celebrating each other's successes and comforting each other in times of need. David was my rock, always there to lift me up when I was feeling down and to make me laugh when I needed it most. After a few years of living together, David finally popped the question, and of course I said yes. We were married in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by our friends and family, and it was the happiest day of my life. I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, as long as I had David by my side, I could face anything. Our journey together has been filled with love, laughter, and countless memories. David is my soulmate, my best friend, and the love of my life. I can't imagine my life without him. 6 years into our marriage, everything seemed perfect. We were making really good money, we loved each other deeply, and we made sure to have regular date nights to keep the spark alive. Life couldn't have been better. Until I messed it all up, that is. The only issue in our marriage was my dissatisfaction with David's sexual performance. It's not that he was bad, but he wasn't exceptional either. I hate to admit it, but I felt like he was just there, going through the motions, like he was just there and his tool was, well, average. His performance matched his size, average. For a long time, I wondered what it would be like to be with someone, bigger. David was attentive and caring, and he always made sure I was satisfied. But there was something missing, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I know it sounds shallow, but it was something that weighed on my mind. I loved David, and I was happy with our life together, but I couldn't shake the curiosity about what else was out there. I tried to push these thoughts aside, to focus on the good in our relationship, but they lingered in the back of my mind, nagging at me. I tried to push these thoughts aside, to focus on the love and connection David and I shared. But the more I tried to ignore them, the more they crept into my mind. I felt guilty for even thinking about it, for wanting something more when I had such a wonderful husband who loved me unconditionally. But the thoughts persisted, gnawing at me from the inside. I tried to bury them under the facade of a happy marriage, but they refused to stay hidden. I knew I had to address them, but I was scared of what it might mean for my marriage, for David. I kept telling myself that it was just a phase, that it would pass with time. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I was craving something more, something different, and I didn't know how to reconcile that with the life I had built with David. Other than that, our life together was mostly smooth sailing, with the occasional bump in the road. We had our disagreements and arguments like any couple, but we were always able to work through them, or so I thought. I tried to push the thought out of my mind, to distract myself from it. I even tried to incorporate different things into our sexual life to spice it up. But no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the curiosity that lingered in the back of my mind. Looking back now, I know it was my fault. I was so blinded by my desire for something more that I didn't see the damage I was causing. It was around that time that a new coworker came into the picture. He was young, handsome, and charming, and it seemed like everyone in the office was drawn to him. They picked me to train him, and I was fine with that. I saw it as an opportunity to focus on something else, to distract myself from my own thoughts. At first, everything seemed normal. He was eager to learn and seemed genuinely interested in the work. But then I started noticing little things, like how he would go out of his way to be overly nice to me. He would bring me lunch, bring me coffee, help me with tasks even when I didn't ask for it. He would volunteer to stay overtime and help me with projects, even though he had no obligation to do so. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured he was just trying to make a good impression, to show that he was a hard worker. But as time went on, his behavior became more and more obvious. He would find excuses to be near me, to touch me in subtle ways that made my skin tingle. He would compliment me, telling me how smart and beautiful I was, how lucky David was to have me. I tried to ignore it, to brush it off as harmless flirtation. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I could feel the tension building between us, a dangerous spark that threatened to ignite at any moment. And as much as I tried to resist it, I found myself drawn to him, to the thrill of the forbidden. I knew I was playing with fire, that I was risking everything I had with David for a fleeting moment of excitement. But I was too curious, too blinded by my own desires to see the danger I was in. His name was Jaden, and the attraction between us was undeniable. I tried to avoid it, to resist the temptation, but honestly, I did a half-assed job at it. There was something about him, something magnetic and intoxicating that drew me to him like a moth to a flame. I knew I should have reported his behavior to HR, that I should have put a stop to it before things went too far. But the truth was, I enjoyed the attention. After years of feeling unsatisfied and unfulfilled, Jaden's compliments and flirtatious gestures were like a breath of fresh air, a validation of my worth and desirability. I told myself that it was harmless, that I was just indulging in a harmless fantasy. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I was playing with fire, risking everything I had with David for a taste of something new and exciting. Despite my best intentions, I found myself continuing to flirt with Jaden. I knew it was wrong, that I was risking everything I had with David for a fleeting moment of excitement. But there was something about Jaden, something intoxicating and irresistible that drew me to him like a moth to a flame. I tried to avoid him, to stay away from situations where we would be alone together. But that wasn't really feasible, as Jaden worked in the same department as me, and our jobs often required us to work closely together. And to make matters worse, Jaden was incredibly charismatic, with a charm that was impossible to resist. It was as if there was this unusual magnet pulling me towards him, no matter how hard I tried to fight it. I want to make it clear that I still love David with all my heart and wouldn't trade him for anything in the world. He was my rock, my soulmate, and the love of my life. But there was just this underlying curiosity, this desire to experience something new and exciting. I knew it was selfish and reckless, but I couldn't help myself. I just wanted a taste, a 1-minute piece of this guy to see what he tasted like and then bounce. I knew it was wrong, but the thrill of the forbidden was too strong to resist. And then a rumor started going around at work. I'm not even sure how it started, but suddenly everyone was talking about it. The rumor was that David had a huge tool. Now let me give you some context. The place where I work is quite huge, not like HR nightmarish huge, but still big enough that there are lots of employees. Despite the size, we're a tight-knit family and tend to all like each other. It was during one of our girls' nights out that the rumor really took off. Some of the girls at work had slept with Jaden. I know it sounds crazy, especially considering he was flirting with me while still sleeping with other girls at the office. But that's beside the point. The girls who had slept with him started talking about him, and somehow the topic of his endowment came up. They said he had a really huge tool and that he was really, really good in bed. They talked about it as if it were the most natural thing in the world, laughing and joking as if they were discussing the weather. The rumor spread like wildfire through the office, fueled by gossip and speculation. Now, mind you, while all this was happening, Jaden knew I was married. Funny, or should I say sadly enough, he also had a girlfriend. In fact, they lived together, and I only found this out from one of the other girls he had slept with. But either way, the rumors continued that Jaden had a big tool, and I started getting really curious. Considering my husband's size and the fact that I've always wondered what it would be like to try something else, if I should put it like that. I know now that what I did was so wrong, but back then, I just really, really wanted a taste, and then I became intoxicated with it. So, like every other office rumor, the rumor came and went, but I was still very, very curious about it. Things continued for a while, the flirting, the back and forth between me and Jaden. We would flirt with each other, pretending that we weren't, dancing around the attraction that simmered between us. It was like a game, a dangerous game that I knew I should stop playing, but I couldn't help myself. Despite my better judgment, I found myself drawn to Jaden, drawn to the excitement and thrill of the forbidden. I knew it was wrong, that I was risking everything I had with David for a fleeting moment of pleasure. But in that moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the tantalizing promise of something new and exciting, something that I couldn't resist. I decided to be a little more friendly with Jaden, which now I know was really, really wrong, and I honestly don't have any excuses for what I did, to be honest. Looking back, I shouldn't have even been friendly with him in the first place while I was training him, but what's done is done. I extended an olive branch to him, starting to thank him for what he would bring me. If he brought me coffee, I would thank him. If he brought me lunch, I would thank him, stuff like that. I started appreciating him, not just for the things he did for me, but for who he was. I started dressing up well to suit his taste because honestly, I enjoyed the compliments. And that was when we started talking on the phone. We had each other's numbers and even each other's Discord, but we had never really talked much because I never replied to his messages. And I guess he really didn't want to bother me much. But now, I started replying to his messages, and we started chatting more. We found out we had a lot in common, liked a lot of the same stuff. It was easy to talk to him, to laugh with him, to share little moments of our day. It was like we had known each other for years, even though we had only just met. We had so much in common, Jaden and I. He was just so charismatic and easy to talk to. I found myself getting lost in our conversations, forgetting for a moment that I was a whole-ass married woman. It was as if I was back in college again, back in high school again, when life was simpler and full of possibilities. I'll admit it now, I did cheat on my husband back then in college. He doesn't even know because, well, I never told him. I was a little more careful back then. We went to different colleges, and I made sure to cover my tracks. My husband came from a very well-privileged family. He went to this huge, prestigious university, while on the other hand, I had to stay back and save up for my education. Of course, my husband suggested paying for me, but I refused. I wanted to be independent, and deep down, I really didn't want to go to the same university as him. There's this thing about going into college with a relationship. It kind of constricts you. A lot of the things that people usually do in college, you won't be able to do them. Go to parties, have random hookups and stuff like that because you're trying to be loyal to someone. It was just hard. I cheated on him a lot of times, but he never found out. Well, until this incident with Jaden. Anyways, it was as if I was back in college again, enjoying my college days, reliving the thrill of being young and free. At that point, my husband started noticing that I was becoming very distracted with my phone. I mean, how couldn't he? I was on my phone texting away all day, morning and night. The only exception was when I was in the office because I got to see Jaden face to face. But every other time, at home or anywhere else, I was on my phone 24 hours chatting with him about something. My husband noticed this and tried to talk to me about it, but I just brushed him off. I told him things were fine and that I was just a lot more distracted with my phone than usual. I felt guilty for lying to him, for betraying his trust, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. I was addicted to the thrill of talking to Jaden, to the excitement of our secret conversations. After about a week of chatting, Jaden and I started hanging out outside of work. We would meet up for coffee or lunch, always careful to keep our meetings secret. It was exhilarating, meeting up with him, knowing that what we were doing was wrong but not caring. The attraction between us was undeniable, and I found myself drawn to him more and more with each passing day. I knew I was playing with fire, risking everything I had with my husband for a moment of excitement. But in that moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the thrill of the forbidden, the exhilaration of being with someone new and exciting. Jaden and I would hang out for a while. At first, it was just short hangouts because we couldn't go to his house as he lived with his girlfriend, and we couldn't go to my house because my husband was always home. However, soon we started hanging out more and more, and before we knew it, we were hanging out for hours. We would go to the cinema to watch a movie, and we would touch each other here or there, but never taking things further than that. It was as if there was this force pushing us to cross these boundaries, and one day, we finally did. On that lucky, or should I say, unfortunate day, Jaden's girlfriend was out for the weekend and invited me over to watch a movie. I went excitedly, knowing that this was our chance to be together without any interruptions. My husband was at home, so Jaden and I couldn't go there, and thankfully his girlfriend was out for the weekend. That's where me working a 9-to-5 job came in handy because I started telling my husband I was working overtime just so I could hang out with Jaden. I would go on dates with him, go see a movie with him, all the while telling my husband I was working overtime and stuff like that. So I went over to Jaden's house to watch the movie. It started off fine. We watched the movie and we really liked it. It was very interesting and very emotional. And well, in between that we kissed. We started making out, unable to resist the attraction that had been building between us for so long. Things progressed pretty quickly between me and Jaden. Before I knew it, I had made one of the biggest mistakes of my life. I slept with Jaden. Of course, I was horrified. I'm not that callous. I regretted this. I knew what I had done was wrong, but it was honestly good. My husband has always been average. His performance averaged, but Jaden was extra large. And his performance was just so much better. Not that my husband is bad, though, but I mean, you get what I mean. It was as if my eyes had been opened to a world of new possibilities. I knew I had messed up big time, but a part of me couldn't help but feel exhilarated by the experience. It was like I had been living in black and white, and suddenly I was seeing the world in color. Jaden had awakened something in me, something that I had never experienced before. But of course, the guilt soon set in. I knew I had betrayed my husband in the worst possible way. I had broken his trust, shattered our marriage vows. And for what? A moment of pleasure? It wasn't worth it. It would never be worth it. I immediately regretted it. I knew I had to leave, so I picked up my stuff and I left. I headed home feeling so guilty. My husband thought I was working overtime when actually I had just cheated on him. I felt really guilty. I even suggested cooking dinner that night, even though my husband was usually the one that handled the house chores since he worked from home. He was surprised but fine with it. I was extra attentive to his needs that night. I think my husband must have even noticed it, and he asked me if anything was wrong, but I told him it was not. He even mentioned that I wasn't on my phone as usual, and I told him that I wanted to take a break from phones that night. The next day I went to work, and well, Jaden was there, just being himself, being nice, complimenting me, trying to strike a conversation with me. He told me it's not my fault, and maybe I shouldn't have believed him, but I honestly needed someone else to take the blame. Jaden had a way of making everything seem fine and bright and sunny. He had a way of making you forget your problems and your biggest troubles. He was just really charismatic. It didn't even take me up to a week before I fell for him again. And before I knew it, Jaden and I were having a full-blown affair. I would tell my husband I was working overtime when actually I was going to be with Jaden. It was extra hard for us because Jaden stayed with his girlfriend. They lived together, so we couldn't go to my house because my husband worked from home, and we couldn't go to Jaden's house because his girlfriend lived with him. She ran an online business too, so she rarely ever left the house, except if she wanted to do deliveries by herself, or if she was hanging out with friends and stuff like that. Jaden and I didn't want to risk going over to his house because what if his girlfriend then came back sooner than she said she would? I didn't want to be embarrassed by anything or be caught with someone else's boyfriend, so we stayed clear of Jaden's house. At first, we would rent hotels, but there was also the fear of someone seeing us in the hotels or entering the hotel. What if I entered a hotel with Jaden and my husband's brother or sister or relative saw us? What would I say? I would have absolutely no excuse. We tried to be careful, meeting up in secluded spots or going out of town for our rendezvous, but the fear of being caught was always there, hanging over us like a dark cloud. And yet the thrill of being with Jaden, of experiencing something new and exciting, was too strong to resist. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but in those moments with Jaden, none of that seemed to matter. All that mattered was the rush of adrenaline, the excitement of the forbidden, the thrill of being with someone who made me feel alive again. So we started using my car. Sometimes we would be intimate in Jaden's car, and other times in my car. We always switched. It was much easier that way, as we could just wait for everyone to leave the office and be the last ones to leave. We would then find a secluded spot and indulge in our affair. But as they say, once you stop focusing on something else and stop putting in the work, like once you stop focusing on your relationship or marriage and you stop putting in the work and the effort, you start unconsciously distancing yourself from your partner. And that was what I was doing with my husband. I started unconsciously distancing myself from him. We weren't as close as before. We weren't going on date nights as much as we used to, because I would come back from going out with Jaden and I would just tell my husband I was tired, and we would just cancel the date nights for the night. Of course, my husband was confused. He honestly tried his best. He fought for our relationship, but I just regret it so much because it was as if I was just watching my husband fight for our relationship and I was just so far gone. I was so invested in Jaden that I didn't even pay attention to my husband or to my marriage. It's funny how you can be so blind to what's right in front of you. My husband was there trying his best to make our marriage work, and I was off with Jaden, living in a fantasy world. I didn't realize how much I was hurting my husband until it was too late, and by then the damage was done. I wish I could go back and change things, but I can't. All I can do now is try to make things easier for my husband when we eventually meet in court for divorce as a way to try and repair the damage I've done. But I know it won't be easy. Trust once broken is hard to mend, and I don't know if my husband will ever be able to trust me again, and even just be friends with me. So things continued for a while. I continued my affair with Jaden. In fact, it started to become a regular routine. I won't lie to you, I started to become sloppy in the way I was hiding my affair. I reckoned that if my husband didn't notice anything, then there was no need in being extra sneaky. I started becoming lazy, I started becoming sloppy, I was withdrawing from my marriage. Everything was just kind of falling apart around me and I didn't really notice. Also, I started to unconsciously distance myself from my friends and family. I stopped going out with them, stopped calling them, stopped checking up on them. My whole world was consumed by my affair with Jaden, and I didn't realize how much I was neglecting everything else in my life. But as they say, the truth always has a way of coming out. And for me, it came out in the most unexpected way. One day, my husband decided to clean my car. He was always so thoughtful and caring, always doing little things to make my life easier. I was really tired. I was just too tired. I guess I seemed a little lazy that day. I had forgotten to discard the napkin and the condom that Jaden and I used. It was still in the car. I felt